All right, I'd like to start off by saying Barakateh Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachah Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is All Kingdoms All Kingdoms Fall Eventually, Except. And that's a title that came to mind. I was just watching the bishops up in Connecticut. The start off was the elder bishop Josiah, one and the elder bishop Ibad. They were going into, them three soldiers over there that got blown up, which just happened to be Jake's. And they were speaking about the, Iran and the current situations that were going on. And that's a thought that came to mind, that all kingdoms pretty much fall. And empires have risen, empires have fallen. And we're witnessing the fall and collapse, whether it's done, whether these so-called international bankers think they're doing it on purpose or not. Eventually, it's the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, that's bringing this place down. All right. There's a couple of precepts that are coming to mind. So I'm just going to get one of them for now. And then we'll just go from there, see where the Spirit, leads this lesson. Lord's will, it'll be an edifying lesson. Pretty much, it's been roughly like 2,000 years since Yahweh Shai was on the scene and was crucified, built up his disciples, got them, up to speed in 3 years for the great task that would be on their shoulders. He even told Peter, Satan has desired to have you to sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith fail not, and when you are converted, strengthen your brethren. Because the Apostle Peter, which wasn't Yahweh Shai's favorite, but he happened to be the Most High's favorite, which shows you they're two different entities that agree in one. All right? And that's all that means when him and his Father are one, meaning that they agree in everything. But the Most High has Peter as his favorite. Yahweh Shai had John as his favorite, which shows you that they're two separate entities. But they just have, when it comes as far as doctrine is concerned, they're not divided. The Yahweh Shai and the Holy Spirit, it's not a unity camp where each one of them has different beliefs and doctrine, but they just come together because they're one. No, they agree as far as their doctrine is concerned. They agree 100%. But the Most High's favorite was Peter. Yahweh Shai's favorite was John. So Yahweh Shai was getting the disciples up to speed, and eventually they would have to take on the message that Yahweh Shai started and continue it on. And he gave them signs, because this is something that the prophets have always been concerned about. When is the end of the... Well, first of all, their main concern was, of course, the kingdom of heaven. But the way they would go about it is finding out when the Messiah would come on the scene, suffer, and they knew that after that, the kingdom of heaven would be established. So in 1 Peter chapter 1 and 9, 1 Peter 1 and 9, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls, because that's when salvation comes, at the very end. There's nobody saved on the planet. We are saved by hope. But hope is not here yet, but it's on its way. We have the letter and confirmation of hope, but we don't have the hope yet, because the hope is what? The kingdom of heaven. So receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently. It says, and who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you. And what is that grace that will come unto us? When Yahweh Shai came on the scene 2,000 years ago. That's the grace. That's the liberty. All right. And from that point on, after that, the consolation of Israel would be born on the earth and eventually crucified. Then the next step in the near future would be salvation. All right. It says, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you, searching what or what manner of time the spirit of Yahushai which was in them did signify, because they knew there was, a time when the Messiah was going to appear and suffer, and then after that, the kingdom. It says, when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Yahushai and the glory that should follow. See? So when we go back to Matthew 24, because one of the very first things that the apostles asked Yahushua when he resurrected from the grave was, will you at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? All right, and that's the point. So let's go back to Matthew 24. We're going to read the 3rd verse. It says, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? Right, meaning the kingdom of heaven, this kingdom falling and the kingdom of heaven being established. And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Now, when you go to that word world there, because when you read the word world in the English, you're going to see the word world in the Old Testament. You're going to see it in the Apocrypha. You're going to see it in the New Testament. But the word world in English does not capture the different meanings of the word world in their respective languages as Hebrew, Greek, Latin. So what would you have to do? You would have to go to the origins of the language. In the case of the New Testament, the majority of it, you could say Greek, even though we believe that the majority of it is, besides the letters of Paul, excluding the book of Hebrews, because the book of Hebrews was written in Hebrew, because of course it was written to the Hebrews. The Gospels, they were written in Hebrew because the disciples did not read or speak Greek. All right. So when you look up this word world in the Greek, the word there for world is eon. Now, what does the word eon mean? The word eon means an uninterrupted age. All right. An uninterrupted age. Let me see something. Right, and I even type eon, just E-O-N, which sometimes they spell it with an A, so I'm going to try that one also. It says the longest division of geological time and an immeasurably long period of time. Right, so pretty much that's determined upon it's determined upon the amount of time that the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai gave each empire to rule. Now, to prove that, let's go to the book of Job, first and foremost, 14 and 5. And it says, seeing his days are determined. When you determine something, it means that you have a beginning date and an end date to it. So seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee, with the Lord. That's why he told the Apostle Paul, we're going to come back to this. The Apostle Paul, once again, who's on trial. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 5. And yeah, I received I guess part of that video that the Deacon Hakad did. He issued a challenge for any, I guess you could say reputable GMS member to come on their platform for however long. He's going to give them $1,000, but you could keep your $1,000. We ain't coming on the platform. He said if brothers don't do it, they're going to blitz, the different GMS groups, camps, with those questions, which don't waste your time. But, Satan gonna do what he gonna do. So do what you gonna do what you gotta do, you know. And I mean, he made it clear, that they're not gonna come start no shit and get into any physical confrontations or anything like that, But pretty much it's a waste of time. The scriptures say, if any man be ignorant, let him be ignorant. They're convinced that some of the writings of Paul, it's I mean, it's crazy because on the one hand, one of them is saying that he doesn't hold the letters of Paul authoritative, and on the other hand, the other one's saying that some of the stuff that the Apostle Paul said is authoritative, but not all of it. So it's just bugged out. So it's a waste of time to go back and forth with these guys. But anyways, nevertheless, 2 Thessalonians 2 and 5. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go straight to the point. Verse 7. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. Why? Because they have a certain set time to rule. As we read in the book of Job 14 and 5, which says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee, thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So the Lord already gave them the amount of land they're going to conquer and the amount of time that they're going to rule for. Let's look up that word determined in the book, in the Greek. Let's look up the word determined in the Greek. That's the word. That's the book of Job 14 and 5. All right, we have the word determined here, which the word determined means charatazah, which charatazah is diligence. Let's see, sharply, that is literally to wound. It says to wound, figuratively to be alert, to decide, bestir self, decide, decree, determine, which doesn't really go into much. All right, so let's look up the word determine in just a regular dictionary. The word determine is establish after a calculation. See, investigation, experiment, survey, or study. So the Lord already set up the amount of land they're going to conquer, which in this case was the world, and the amount of time that they were going to rule. All right, so that's pretty much the main point. So let's read that again. Job 14 and 5. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. Now let's go to one more in the same book of Job, the 21st chapter and the 21st verse. It says, for what pleasure have he in his house after him when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? So they have a certain time period to rule. And after that time period is up, then they will fall. Ecclesiastes 3 and 1 says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Let's go once more. Another one is Ecclesiastes 8 and 6. It says, because to every purpose there is time and judgment. Therefore the misery of man is great upon him. For he knoweth not that which shall be, for who can tell him when it shall be? Right, because they have it's determined, predetermined, how long these devils are going to rule. And we're at the point now where we're witnessing their downfall. And it's evident because Yahushua also in that same discourse that he gave the disciples told them what the signs were going to be of his coming and the end of the world, meaning the end of the Roman world. Now the Roman world, the Roman Empire had fallen long ago. But there was a second part of that Roman Empire, which was written within Daniel the 7th chapter, but it wasn't as super clear as it is when we go to the book of Revelation 13. Because in Daniel, the 7th chapter, it spoke about the horn. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Um, Revelation 13. And just bear with me while I find the verse. I'm sorry, not Revelation 13, Daniel 7. Daniel 7, and then Lord's will will go. Daniel 7. Right, verse 8, because the 7th verse speaks about the 4th beast. It says, I considered the horns, meaning the 10 horns, which represent the EU, European Union, used to be the EEC, the European Economic Community. Now, they did have a name where there was a coalition, you know, with the different resources that they had. But for the most part, the thing that was established in March of 1957, they began everything. And then January 1st, 1958 is when they got their charter. All right, the EEC, European Economic Community, which later became the European Union. Verse 8 says, I considered the horns, meaning the 10, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. And that little horn that came up among them was what? America. So, in a prophetic way, it spoke about it, but it wasn't super clear of what it was. Because all you know that there was four beasts, 4 kingdoms. Which really is 5, but really it's an extension. Really it's 4, but it's extended. But you have to be able to understand prophecy and understand the book of Revelation 13 to really understand that full breakdown. But it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Right, because when America, which was part of the 7, because you had the 7 heads, when you look at the book of Revelation 12, 13, and so on, you had a beast that the Apostle John saw rise up out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns. Those 7 heads and 10 horns represented the empires of Esau ruling and their allies. The 7 heads represented the Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germanian Major, Germanian Minor, and Britain. And out of those 7 came the 8th head, which is America. Because America would be the revival of the ancient Roman Empire. So in a sense, you could say that America is Rome, the capital, and they still have the same allies over there in Europe, including Italy, which is one of the allies, which that's where Rome is situated. All right, which is the capital, pretty much the capital of that land. So I said, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Right, and those 3 horns that were plucked up by the roots was the Spanish, the French, and the British. Because if you look at the map of America, America was pretty much split into 3 divisions. You had the British that held certain, like the 13 colonies and the certain areas. You had the Spanish that you could say it had like the southern half. That's where you have places or states called Florida, which is a Spanish word. You have Nevada, New Mexico, California, so on and so forth. These were controlled by the Spanish, right? And then you have the places that were controlled by the French. You had the French quarters, you had Louisiana, so on and so forth. That's why, you see lands like that. So America was held by 3 of these European nations, which the Americans, so-called Americans that were here, which were part of Britain, when they broke away from the king, so-called, they fought these 3 European nations to take over America. And that's how they plucked them up by the roots. Now, in the case of Napoleon was involved in so many wars that his resources and his men were limited. So that's why you have something called the Louisiana Purchase, because eventually what he did was he sold whatever he had, whatever land he had here in possession to America. So he pretty much, you know, he what's the word? He oh man, I can't think of the word right now. It's something that Jake uses in when they playing cards, you know. Um, I can't think of it, but pretty much he gave up his position here in America. All right, but they did have wars with the French because Gad joined the French in fighting against the Americans. All right, and that's how they call it the French Indian Wars or the Indian French Wars, or however they say it. And that's how, you know, eventually the French were routed out. But what cemented that was the Louisiana Purchase, because this guy Napoleon sold, you know, his shares. Yes, it's forfeiture, but you know, in cards, you know how Jake, there's another word for it. When Jake plays spades or something, I forget the term, but you know, it'll come back. If not, then forfeiture is good. They forfeited their rights. All right, so let's read that again. You know, and you could do the research on that. You know, you could do the research on the renege. That's it. They reneged on the deal. So he reneged on the deal by selling off his lands to, you know, America. So that took him out. So all three of those empires were plucked up by the roots because they no longer controlled America. Even though indirectly behind the scenes, Britain still controls it, but they were pretty much plucked out, all three of them. So let's read that again. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, which represents wisdom, and a mouth speaking great things. And you see that they have a mouth speaking great things. You know, well, one of the great things that they speak is there's a mantra or a song that the U.S. Air Force sung. I believe it was a song, or it could have just been a saying. You know, nothing can stop the Air Force. So pretty much what they're implying is nothing, including the Most High, can stop the U.S. Air Force, which shows you the pride of these devils. You know. And many other things, you know. I mean, blasphemy. In Revelation 13, it also speaks about blasphemy, and they speak against the heavens. So then it goes on to say, after that little horn and everything that was being said in this verse here, it says, verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. Because once this fourth beast would fall and come back into power, it would eventually fall again. Because this time when Yahushua comes, he's going to take down all of these different empires. That's why he's known as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Why? Because he's going to be credited with taking down all of these empires. Just like if you have wars that are fought out there and one particular side wins, you know, that particular side in history, they say, well, the French were conquered by so-and-so, or this country was conquered by so-and-so. So now they have the crown. So Yahushua is going to be credited with all of the crowns of all of the empires on the planet. Because although America is at the top ruling, you have China, you have Russia, you know, you have other smaller countries that still have, you know, an empire, so to speak, or rulership among them. So Yahushua is coming back to take all of them and put them all into subjection. All right. So it says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. Right, because now it's time for the kingdom, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, because he had woolly hair like an afro. All right. Not that his hair was white, even though it is white, but the word wool here does not imply white, because it doesn't say it's white. The word wool here is the texture of the hair of the Most High. And as you've heard Elder Apostle Tar go over it over and over again, time and time again, that you have different types of wool. There's black wool, there's brown wool, there's white wool, there's a mixture of different colors. That's why when the Lord said, if you come to bring a lamb to the Lord, it's got to be 1 year old. It can't have any spots or blemishes in it. It has to be pure. All right, so the Lord's hair is pure wool. And of course, being the Ancient of Days, he's going to have a hoary head, but the word wool here does not imply white. It's talking about the texture. So when Daniel saw the Lord, he saw the texture of his hair. All right, so you could understand. It says, his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. That represents the chariots. All right, so now let's go from there. Let's go to the book of Revelation 13. I mean, some of this is basic, some of it is a little bit more advanced, but the students out there that have been learning, you get the basics, get cemented in the basics, and then you're going to need some meat every once in a while. So Revelation 13, you know what, we'll start at the first verse. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, this is the Apostle John speaking, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. So you can keep it in context. There's no such beast as a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. But when the Apostle John saw this, he actually saw an actual beast. This is what he actually saw. He wrote what he saw. But the thing is that this beast that he saw in a vision actually represented empires of Esau. This is why it was called a red beast or a scarlet colored beast, which is red. And the 7 heads represented the 7 major empires of Esau. When Esau started ruling the planet during the time of the Greeks, they'll say history began with the Greeks. History did not begin with the Greeks, because you had the Sumerian Empire, you have the Babylonian Empire, you have the Egyptian Empire, you had many other empires in the past that ruled before there was any Greek Empire. Because those lands in Europe, Macedonia, Greece, Italy, and all those different empires, before they ruled, they were inhabited by dark-skinned Japhetic people. All right? Such as the Etruscans. When you look up the Etruscans are brown-skinned people. You have something called the Picts, which there was a shortened form of pictorial. Pictorial people were called that way because of the Romans, because they used to put tattoos on their bodies. When you look at these Polynesian, so-called Polynesian people, these are the ancient sons and daughters of Japheth, not the so-called white man, because that's another fallacy. They'll tell you that Japheth was a so-called white people. No, they were not, because the so-called white man did not inhabit the land known as Europe today. They came out of Mount Seir, all right, which is south, of Jerusalem. All right, they were in Mount Seir. All right, these are the Edomites. Their nationality is Edomites. The word Edom means red, and this is why this was a scarlet colored beast. So they'll tell you that civilization started with the Greeks, but no, the Edomite civilization started with the Greeks. And there were 7 major empires that ruled: the Greeks, the Romans, then you had the French, you had the Spanish, you had the Germanian Major, Germanian Minor, and then you had Britain. And out of Britain came America. America would be the 8th, which is of all 7 of them. All right? So back in Revelation 13:1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Yeah, because they say they're the Christians, they say they're the Most High, they're Yahushua. Yahushua was crucified in this country by putting up a picture of a white, so-called white image of the Son of the Lord, which he's not a so-called white man with leprosy. That's how they crossed him out here. All right? And you still have individuals out there invoking those names, so-called Jesus and so-called Christ, which is fully crossing the Lord out. Because whenever somebody thinks of those names, they're thinking about a so-called white man. All right? So it goes on to say, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So now we're going all the way back to the beginning of the beast. The leopard is who? That represents the Greek Empire, which represents the first king, which is Alexander, what they call Alexander the Great. Now, before we read on, let's get that. Let's show you that. Let's go to 1 Maccabees 1:1. Because you'll go to Daniel 8, but Daniel 8 doesn't really break, it doesn't give you the name. And 1 Maccabees 1:1, it gives you the name. It says, and this is in the Apocrypha. The word Apocrypha, APO, means to send, and Krypha, where you get the word cryptic, is hidden. To send hidden. Apocrypha, to send hidden. 1 Maccabees 1:1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip. So this Alexander is what they call Alexander the Great. His father was Philip II. You know, he conquered many lands, but his son was written in the prophecy that he would be the one to conquer the known world at the time. And he did that by unifying all those Greek city-states to bring them under one banner. All right, to be able to come together as one so that they can go and conquer these dark nations. It says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, which Kittim is, I believe that Cyprus today is an island. It was called Kittim at one time, but then they changed the name. I believe that's Cyprus, if I'm not mistaken. It says, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, because at the time when the Greeks started to gain ground as an empire, the Persians were ruling. And there was thought lunacy, madness to fight against the Persians, because the Persians had many different armies and nations fighting in their army. All right, so it was thought crazy because they had a great, you know, they were rich and they had a great army. So when the Greeks fought against them, it was considered to be suicide. Right? It says, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So he was the first over Greece. And when you read Daniel the 8th chapter, it tells you that. It says, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. So at that time, he was crowned with the empire of the Greeks. And he, you know, was, for lack of words, he would be the king of kings at that time. Because the Persians, the Medes, they were the king of kings at one time. Just like Nebuchadnezzar at one time was the king of kings. So every empire that conquered the other empires, they took the head position. And this is what Yahushua is coming to do when he comes back. So now when we jump down to the 7th verse, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, because he died as a young man. He died around the age of 32 or so. It took him 12 years to conquer the world, and then after that he died. You know? And then it says, and his servants bear rule everyone in his place, right? Because he had subordinates, which were generals, as Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassander, Lysimachus, Antigonus, and others. He had many generals, but there were 4 main generals that took over his empire, and they split the empire up amongst themselves. You had the Seleucids, the Ptolemies, you had Cassander, and you had Lysimachus. The kingdom was pretty much divided among them. Antigonus had a part in it, but his part was taken away because some of those kings came together to fought against him, you know, to take his, you know, half or his piece of the pie, so to speak, because there was really 4. main ones. It says, and after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, right? And this is when the Greeks, or that what they say civilization started with the Greeks. This is when they first took over the empire, right? It says, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Why? Because the Edomites took control of the world, and from that time, evils multiplied in the earth. Let's go real quick to Proverbs 29 and 16. When the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall. So we're at the position now to see them falling. Yahushua said, I seen Satan as lightning fall from heaven, because he actually saw the Edomites falling. You know, when the scriptures say that Satan and his angel were cast out of heaven, the average Christian out there thinks about so-called Lucifer and the angels being cast out with him. Lucifer is not Satan. Lucifer is a word that means illuminated ones, or light bearer, or dawn bearer. This is a name given to the so-called Illuminati, which the word Illuminati means enlightened ones, or light bearers. Okay, when Isaiah seen this, him being cast out of heaven, that was Esau and his military being knocked out of the skies, their planes, helicopters, drones, or whatever the case may be, being knocked out of the sky by Yahushua and the angels. To get a little better understanding on that, you can read the book of 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, and it speaks about Yahushua coming in this gigantic ship, and the armies of the world and their technology fighting against the Lord, and the Lord just wiping them out to where it was nothing left but dust. That's what it means. I seen Satan as lightning fall from heaven. All right. So when these devils took over, you know, they multiplied, transgressions multiplied, they increased. And you can see it from then to now, how much devious, perverse the world has become, demoralized. And it's a cesspool. The world has become a cesspool. It was already effed up, but it's gotten worse since the Edomites took over. And it's gotten progressively worse as the years and centuries, you know, and millenniums rolled on. All right? Now, let's go from there. Let's go back to Revelation 13. And now we're going to go back to the second verse. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So now we know who the leopard is. And he actually wore a leopard skin hat. That was a custom back then. You know, you would, you know, conquer an animal or kill him, and then you would strip the skin and wear his head as a hat. You know, it was like a coat. It was like a, you know, form of victory. You go back to the Canaanites and them, you know, they would have like Dagon. They would have a fish that they would strip out and wear the fish head. This is where the Pope today gets the, you know, that hat from. The hat with the gaping mouth open on top. That goes back to the priest of Dagon. Which the word Dagon goes back to the Hebrew word Dag, which means fish. Because it was a so-called fish god. All right, and they would, but the difference was between the Pope today and the priesthood back then of the Canaanites and them, is they would actually have the gaping mouth of the fish open on top of their head, but the rest of the fish draped down behind them like a mantle. Okay, so it says, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. Now the bear today represents Russia. Russia was never a part of the seven. It is not a part of the seven, and it never was a part of the seven. But the reason why it's mentioning the bear or Russia in this verse here is because it spoke about the feet. That your head is the beginning of you, the feet is the end of you. All right, so Russia is going to be that particular nation to bring an end to this whole empire. All right, the Lord is going to use them to set it off in this World War III. right? And then Yahushua and the angels coming back, they're going to finish it off. Because they're only going to make so much noise, but the Lord's going to use Russia and Russia's allies and America's allies to shoot missiles over here. All right. It says, and his mouth as a mouth of a lion, and the mouth of a lion represents Britain. All right. That's pretty much behind the scene who runs things, because you have the Rothschilds that own England. Going back to the 1700s, when Nathan Rothschild, took over the finance, in the stock market of England. If you know that history, you could do some research on that. All right. So pretty much behind the scenes, they're running things. It says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Yeah, because the dragon represented who? The Roman Empire. And America today is running in that same fashion. Now, when you read on, right, it says, I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death. What you have to ask yourself is, what head is this talking about? Well, when the Apostle John was having this vision, the head that was in power was what? The Roman Empire. So, in process of time, actually, it started here, but really, because Jake took over the same year when this vision was happening. This was roughly around 96 AD. The scholars out there will tell you it's roughly around 96 AD. 96 AD was the last year that Domitian, which was the son of Vespasian and his brother Titus, this is when he was, I believe he was assassinated, put to death, and then Jake that took over, that's when Jake started ruling in around 96 AD. But the problem was that Jake was still following the ancient pagan Roman customs. So that's why at this point it was still known as the pagan Roman Empire. When Constantine came on the scene, which was a pagan also, the religion of Christianity was made the religion of the Roman Empire, even though it still had pagan roots to it, but it was known as the Holy Roman Empire. This is when Esau really, when that form of rulership got taken out. And then, it goes further up into 476, but the main starting point would be 325 AD. Then eventually, 1,000 years later, that whole time period, Jake would be ruling. And then you had a period beginning in like the 1300s into the 1400s known as the Renaissance period. Renaissance, which is a French word, which means rebirth. Re is back, nacer, or naissance, Spanish nacer, is to be born. So renaissance is to be reborn. What was reborn? It was Esau coming back into power on the earth and starting his whole and mending or healing that empire once again on the planet. So from that point to now, this is what we're witnessing. We're witnessing that revived Roman Empire taking over. And now, how do we know that this is the Roman Empire? Well, all you have to do is look at, not at the structure of buildings of America, but at the structure of the buildings of these governmental buildings, such as courthouses and post offices and things of that nature. In the most cases, all of these different courts and different law or governmental buildings of Esau are all shaped in the form of those ancient Roman buildings, which they used a lot of pillars back then. Roman pillars, which went back to the Greeks. All right, so when you look at the governmental buildings, you can see that they are built in the fashion of the ancient Roman Empire. When you go into their court systems, when you study law, you have the English words, but then you always have Latin phrases and Latin words for their legislative body. You go to school, you learn Roman numerals. All right, you look on the back of the dollar bill, You have Latin writing and Roman numerals. Why? Because America, all America did was took on the customs and the laws of the ancient Roman Empire. So this is how that head that was wounded came back to life. So let's read that again and read into it. Verse 3, Revelation 13 and 3. And I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death, that was the Roman Empire, and his deadly wound was healed during the time of the Renaissance period. And all the world wondered after the beast, because once the Renaissance period was established, they began something called Iconoclasm. The word icon means image. The word clasm or class means defacing or destruction. So iconoclasm is the destruction or the defacing of images. What images? All of the dark art that was set up by Jake in that 1,000-year rule. This is why you go through Europe and you still have certain places that have some of this dark art. Icons, so you can understand. And these devils are so proud that they have the nerve to say, oh, the reason why, these are old icons, and the reason why they're dark is because they're dirty. Get the fuck out of here, man. The reason why they're dark is because, our forefathers painted those. And that's why they were dark. But then what Esau did was he went on a campaign when he conquered Jake to deface the images, whitewash the images, throw acid on them, trying to get that color off, and then painted them white. And the places where they couldn't get rid of that kinky hair, they would paint doggy stringy hair over it, but it would still be thick. This is why certain paintings that look like that they're white, you'll see the stringy hair, but you see the stringy hair like kind of high, because they had to paint over the afros. Now, when you go to the Renaissance period where you have Renaissance paintings, you'll notice that the doggy stringy hair is flat on the heads of those pictures. But when you look at the icons that they whitewash, you'll see the doggy stringy hair painted, but it's kind of high because they try to cover the afros. Then you go through the different statues that were carved as the four tetrarchs, and you'll notice that they broke off the noses. That the fingers are all intact. Toes they'll be intact. You have different things on the statue that would break easier than the nose, but you'll see the nose chiseled off. That was done on purpose. All right, like you had the four tetrarchs. You can look up that term or that word, four tetrarchs, and you'll see a picture of four governors that were ruling at that time. I believe one of them was Maximius. I can't remember all of them offhand right now, but there was four of them all together. And you'll see that they cut the noses off. So this was that Renaissance period time when the world wondered after the beast, because everyone today believes that Esau is God, that Esau is Yahushai, that Esau is the angels, that they're the standard for righteousness. And this was all done during that Renaissance period. It says, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, right? Because there people today that are living the so-called American dream are doing nothing but praising and worshiping the ancient Roman Empire. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast. The beast is NATO in the EU, who is able to make war with him, right? Because they have, just NATO alone has a hell of a fighting force. The EU, which is all the same, and then America attached to that, and Canada. So that's a military force to be reckoned with. This is why countries like Russia and China have to come together with other smaller nations to be able to have a chance to fight against these devils, because of this great army that they have together. And that was the Lord given that because of the blessing that was given to Esau, right? You know what? We could go on, but I want to just jump down to the point in the 11th verse. And behold, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. This other beast that came out of the earth is the little horn that we read in Daniel, the 7th chapter. Now, the little horn in Daniel, the 7th chapter, has nothing to do with the little horn in Daniel, the 8th chapter. Those are two different horns. The one in Daniel 7 represents America. The one in Daniel 8 represents Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay? So I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. That's America. He had two horns like a lamb. This is their bipartisan or two-party system known as the Democrats and Republicans, which they got that from the ancient Roman Empire. They got their whole, the Senate, the setting up of presidents, all from the ancient Roman Empire. They call them Caesars then, they call them presidents now. All right, it says, and he spake as a dragon. This goes into their legislation. Brothers have done many videos on that. And he, meaning this beast, right, exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. And you see it when you look at their court systems, when you look at their law system, even when you go into, if you want to become a veterinarian, zoologist, or whatever the case may be, everything is, it goes back to the Latin phrases, Latin terms that you have to learn if you want to be a part of that particular field. All right, and it all goes back to the ancient Roman Empire. And them which dwell therein, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And it was healed during the Roman Empire. During the Renaissance period. Now we're at the point when this empire is falling and it's about to be destroyed. Let's go real quick to Psalms. This is why we read in Daniel, you know, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. What thrones was that speaking about? That was speaking about the thrones of these nations that ruled. And today, the Esau is ruling the whole planet. Trying to get, let me see, Psalms 75 and 5. Lift not up your horn on high. A horn represents power. So the Lord is telling Esau, don't lift up your horn on high, your power on high, because your power is not yours. Yahweh Bashem Al-Shai gave the power. Speak not with a stiff neck, for promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. So it's the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Al-Shai, who establishes empires and brings down empires. And this is why you see these different wars, rumors of wars, which is a part of the signs that Yahweh Shai spoke of. And the skirmishes and you know, wars that are breaking out, because this is a sign that the Lord is on his way. When we read Daniel 7:4, Daniel 4 and 17, this matters by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. So Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is ruling in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Right, because each empire had a time period to rule, and setteth up over it the basis of men. And we're witnessing the basis of men ruling, which are the Edomites, so-called white people, so you could understand. And not all so-called white people are Edomites, because you have some that are Jakes, because of the mixing and the mingling. You have some that are Hamites, you have some that are Edomites, you have some that are Ishmaelites, so on and so forth. The ones that we're talking about are the ones that go to the direct line of Esau. That's what we're talking about, those Edomites. All right, and they are the basis of men. And it's no coincidence that these little hats who infiltrated the governments of the world and set themselves into power, they're the ones running things behind the scene, because they are the lowest of the low. They are the scum of the earth. All right, a fugitive and a vagabond. All right, the scum of the earth. Ecclesiastes 9:11. It says, I I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, right? Because it doesn't matter how strong your military is, doesn't matter how wise you are, doesn't matter whatever, or how rich you are. But what does matter is, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Because every nation on the planet Earth had a chance to rule. And now we're witnessing the very final seconds of Esau's rule. Now, before I read on, let's go to the Apocrypha. Let's go to 2nd Ezra, so I can share something with you, those of you that don't know. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and verse 7. This is Ezra, because remember the whole time Ezra was speaking to the Lord, he was asking them about the end of the world, how much time is left, you know, the people that are coming later, you know, they need to learn this stuff because, you know, the records were burnt. So, you know, he was pretty much trying to find out how much time was left. And from the time when he asked this, which was around roughly 400 BC, somewhere in that area, the world had already started to wax old. So this is, you talking about now 2,500 years ago. So how much closer are we now than back then? So 2nd Ezra 6 and 7, then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times, or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Because in order for the kingdom of heaven to be established, this kingdom has to fall. Which Lord's will, we're going to get that next. And this is what the angel answered him. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau, because this was the great battle between the righteous and the wicked, which began during the time of Abel and Cain. Abel being the righteous, Cain being the wicked. Eventually, Cain had descendants. Abel had descendants. Well, through Seth, actually. And there was a flood, and the destruction came, and everybody on the planet was destroyed except for 8 souls. Noah, his 3 sons, and their 4 wives. You know, and the animals, of course, that they had on the ark. Then when the earth started to repopulate again, and man started to, you know, multiply on the face of the earth, eventually through the chosen line of Shem, then you had our Faxad, so on and so forth, down through Peleg, you know, all the way down through Abraham. Abraham was the first father of the promise, the exalted father of the promise. Then he had sons, but only one of those sons was a part of the promise, which was Isaac. From Isaac, you had 2 sons that came out of him, which was Jacob and Esau. Jacob being the righteous, Esau being the wicked. And from that point on, this is when it all began. Now we're from that point back around, let's say roughly like 2000 BC till now, we're witnessing the very end of what began way back then. Ain't that something? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau, because eventually Jacob would pull down Esau from their power. Because remember, they were the firstborn, but it was said that the elder shall serve the younger. All right? And that would be in the future. Even though back then they had a stint where they were in subjection under the kings of Judah, and then they broke away, but eventually in the future they will really serve that out, which we're about to witness that soon. It says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows, because the next kingdom that's coming belongs to us, beginning with Yahushai, then the elect of the nation of Israel, and then eventually all Israel will be in the kingdom of heaven. All right? And when you look up that word world, this is why it's important to look up words in the original language. When you look up that word world in 2nd Ezra, when you go back to the Latin, the word there is seculi, where you get the word secular, which means worldly. But secular or seculi which is translated to world in the English, goes back to the Greek word eon, okay, which means an uninterrupted rule, or when an empire rules for a certain period of time. So in order for the kingdom of heaven to come, these empires that are ruling, Esau being the end, has to come to an end. All right? Just bear with me 1 second. 2nd Ezra 4, and we could end it here. 2nd Ezra 4 and 28. But as concerning the things whereof thou askest me, I will tell thee. For the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. All right? So the evil is already here, but the destruction hasn't come. Why? Because the inhabitants of the world have not fallen. The rulers of the planet have not fallen, beginning with Esau. If therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, because these devils turn the world upside down, so now the Lord got to turn it upside down again, which is going to turn it right side up. And if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, which is here, America and their empire, then cannot it come that is sown with good. You see? So the good is what? The kingdom of heaven, the empire. It says, for the grain of evil seed had been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness has it brought up unto this time? Right, unto the time when Ezra was having these visions. It says, and how much shall it yet bring forth until the time of threshing comes? So we're now entering into the time of threshing. And how much more wicked is the world now than it was then? Because eventually, in due process, when Ezra was on the scene, right, eventually the Greeks will come into play. And we read that once the Greeks started taking over and putting crowns upon their heads, it said evil is multiplied in the earth. So how much more now when they have control of the whole entire planet? It says, ponder now by thyself how great a fruit of wickedness the grain of evil seed had brought forth, right? Because it brought a lot of wickedness. But it had to go down that way. And when the ears shall be cut down, which are without number, how great a floor shall they fill? Then I answered and said, how and when shall these things come to pass? Wherefore are our years few and evil? And he answered me, saying, do not thou hasten above the Most Highest, for thy haste is in vain to be above him, for thou hast much exceeded. Right, because the scriptures say, wake not my love until he please. Because Yahweh has a set period of time when he's going to establish everything and bring this nation down. So we can't try to hasten above that, even though the scriptures say hasten the day. And we are hastening the day, and we can't wait for the Lord to take them down, but he's going to take them down when he's ready. Did not the souls also of the righteous ask questions of these things in their chambers? And we read about that in the book of 1 Peter, the 1st chapter, saying, how long shall I hope on this fashion? Yeah, because we man, if you ask us, he's long overdue. But remember, the Lord said, what if the Most High willing to show his power, endure with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? Because they were tailor-made for this destruction. The wicked is created for the day of wrath. You know, so we're just patiently waiting for this devil to fall. It says, when cometh the fruit of the floor of our reward? Right, because did not Peter say that when we gave up everything? Lord, what we going to receive? And Yahweh said, he that have given up everything, you're going to receive 100-fold. I'm just merely paraphrasing. It says, and unto these things Uriel the archangel gave them answer and said, even when the number of seeds is filled in you. Right, because you have a certain number of righteous that of the nation of Israel that are the elect that had to be sealed. It says, for he hath weighed the world in the balance, and the world has been weighed in the balance, and the world is coming up lacking because of the rulers of the world that is moving the world in the direction of evil and wickedness. You see? Because they are the judges. They know right from wrong. They got the instructions. But they push evil and wrong and wickedness, but they do it in such a gradual way that the average person out there that's not a part of the elected nation of Israel is conditioned to think that these things are righteous when they're not. So there's a filthy, perverse spirit that's pushed on the world, and the world accepts it. That's why. That's another reason why the scripture says the world wondered after the beast, because they're drinking that abomination from that cup. It says, because so now the world has been weighed in the balance and it's lacking. So what's the next step? Destruction. Because remember, when the world became so evil and wicked back then during the time of Noah, what did the Lord do? He destroyed it by flood. He promised he would never destroy the world again by flood, by water, but he never said anything about fire. The first death was the flood. The second death is fire, nuclear fire, and the lasers from the chariots. That's going to set this place ablaze. It says, by measure have he measured the times, and by number have he numbered the times. And he doth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. So everything in the scriptures must be fulfilled and will be fulfilled before the Lord can take this devil out. Because as much as we want this devil to go down, we don't want him to go down as bad as the Most High wants him to go down. Scriptures say the Lord is long-suffering. Long-suffering means that you suffer for a long time. He's ready to take this place down. He's ready to establish the kingdom. But he has, his timetable. And the Lord's time is different from our time. We're over here languishing, but, we're still hopeful. And we see everything happening. That's why the main prophecy to look for is the MOTB being established, which is the micro-C-hip. And, the other forms that they're going to put it in, whether it's in the head or in the hand or any part of the body. And once this is established and set up, then things are going to move a lot faster. Even though things are moving fast, it's going to move a lot faster. Here it is, we're in February already. Now they're promising they're making them sign contracts and agreements, these migrants, that they're going to give them $1,000 a month, but to spend it just on groceries and things of that nature. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to jump on it. And let's say after a month or 2 or 3 or however long they do it, then they say, well, the next phase is if you want this money, now you got to go into the next phase. Whether it's to accept a step closer to the MOTB or they just spring that on them. In order for you to have that, you got to get this device installed in you, so that, it'll be easier for you to make payments. You can't get your card stolen. You can't get your stuff stolen, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. What do you think that would do? That would bring, let's just say in America, that would bring the average American in America to a point where they either comply with what these migrants are complying with, or they get shut out of the system. So these devils are very devious, man. Remember, it says that they accomplish a diligent search. They've been looking into different scenarios, and they know that the greatest scenario is poverty. The greatest, influence is poverty and famine. And by bringing these migrants in here, they could do 2 things. They could bring in the military forces that they need from the other nations, and they could also bring in the poor of Jake from down in Central and South America to this country to also establish the next phase of it, which would be the MOTB, the implementation of the MOTB, which is the micro-C-hip. They're very devious. They're very subtle, as the scriptures say. They accomplish a diligent search in wickedness. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with this whole situation. We got to just find out and see what's happening. In our Lord's will, these things speed up even more. All right, so with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.